levels of soloing are this. The first one is where your left hand does not change. It keeps the chords. The chords, your left hand does exactly the same thing you would be doing if you were just strumming the song. But instead of strumming the song, you will just pick random notes out of the chord. Here, I'll demonstrate. Little cabin home on the hill. So that's what a level 1 solo looks like. So we can practice that together. Again, it's essentially your left hand stays the same, doing the same chord shapes, but then you can approach, instead of strumming, you're just going to play individual notes, and the individual notes can be totally random. They can follow the rhythm of the melody. So if I follow the rhythm of the melody, it would sound like this. So that was loosely following the rhythm of the melody. So does that make sense? You want to try it? 1, 2, level 1 solo, go. Yeah, let's try it again. On the hill, 2, 3, 4. Let's do it one more time. On the hill, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Great. So that's the one to jump in on. It's the I mean, it's a totally passable, it sounds like a passable solo. You're doing something different, something is definitely changed, so the attention changes. And if you're playing with microphones, you just get like real close to the microphone when you're doing that, so your note's a little louder. But that's an easy way to get through the solo without, you're very less likely to get lost because your left hand's doing the same thing, so you can kind of hear the outline of the song really easily. So level 2 is what they call licks-based soloing, and that's where you're doing basically cliche licks or scales that are associated with the chord, but you're not necessarily quoting the melody. So this is what people will do often in jams if they don't know the melody, and they're what kind of just noodling around on the chords. So that would look and sound like something like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that's the kind of licks-based solo approach. Some of them are sort of basic. Some of them come out of the chord shapes. Like, for example, this scale fits nice in a C chord. So it's helpful to learn the scales that are associated with each chord. And most of the time, the scales that you'll be using are what are called pentatonic scales. Pentatonic scales, the reason why they're so useful is that they are just 5 notes of the normal 7-note major scale, and all 5 notes sound good over the chord, whereas the 2 notes of the major scale, you have to kind of put in the right spot to make sound good. That's the reason why people learn pentatonic scales first, often when they're talking about licks-based soloing. So, figuring out the chords associated, or the scales associated with each chord, is a really good way of approaching that sort of a really good way of approaching learning licks-based soloing. And then basically you can noodle on those. I'll do that one more time, just using those pentatonic scales.
Okay.
Little cabin home on the hill. So I'll just use pentatonic. So that's all kind of pentatonic scales. I was sticking to just those, and basically that's the foundation for noodling what this level 2 kind of solo, which is just a licks-based solo. And you can actually use a lot of the lick ideas in level 3 soloing, which is just playing the melody. Or something based off of the melody, and that can be tricky. You have to really know the song well. And I'll kind of leave you with the melody approach to soloing is that usually the melody notes lie in the chord of that particular moment. So you can find the note, particularly actually what people refer to as the skeleton of the melody, or the skeletal melody, is if you just play the notes that are on the beat, then you'll find that most of those are actually notes right out of the chord. So listen to the so let's see if I only did chords on my left hand. Let's see how much of the melody I could pick up. Okay, so I can't hit that low one. There we go, yeah. So you can pull a lot of the melody just from the chords if you don't change anything. And by playing what's called the skeletal melody, which is just the notes that are on the beat, the notes that are in between the beat are what are called passing tones. So they are not a part of the chord, they're in between notes. So that would, if I were to add those, there's a passing tone. There's another passing tone. That's a passing tone. Passing tone. Passing tone. Chord tone. Passing tone. Passing tone. Passing tone. Little cat. Passing tone. Been home. Passing tone. The hill. So that's kind of how people think about that. They find the outline of the song from the chords, and then the passing tones come from knowing those scales that I mentioned before. So, knowing the pentatonic scales that are associated with each chord is the key, I think, to being able to do that melody-based soloing. So it's kind of a path from one to the next. I think they all lead up.
Yeah.
So.
Engineer, reach up and pull the